Before we go any further, I do want to just clarify that this video is meant for manga readers, and there will be spoilers in this that cover up to chapter 226. So if you don't want to be spoiled on Sakamoto Days, you should do something productive and work towards accomplishing the goals you have in life, and also catch up to the series so you can watch this later. But if you are caught up to the series, then you have nothing to worry about. Let's just get started. Okay, welcome back to the channel for another video here on the channel. And today I really just felt like discussing a growing issue I've seen within Sakamoto Days, which is character utilization. The way that some of the characters are handled within the story, I feel like has not been done the best. And to be honest, this isn't a thing with all the characters in the series. Like, there's characters like Nagumo, Shishiba, Osaragi, Kamihate, Hisuke, Sakamoto himself, and Shin. A lot of them are used correctly, they're used well for the most part, but there's a few characters within the series where I just feel like they're not being used in the best way possible. But with that out of the way, let's just get started with the character that everybody immediately thinks about when talking about the topic of sideline characters in this manga. And you know, I really did want to hold off on talking about her until the end, but it's such a prevalent issue that I need to address it immediately. She was looking to be a very important character to the story, had some great moments early in her career, but then all of a sudden goes missing in action for well over 170 chapters for seemingly no reason. And I've seen a lot of frustration within this community about the way this character has been handled, because Officer Nakase has been missing since chapter 3. All of her fans have just felt forsaken and left to dry. Okay, all right. I'm not gonna waste any more time talking about Officer Nakase. We all know I was really referring to Lou, but the thing is that, like, not only is it sad that Officer Nakase got sidelined so hard she didn't even make it into the anime, but the fact that that statement that was originally meant for Lou can be applied to more than just her is exactly why I'm making this video, because that exact statement can be applied to a part in Obiguro. Well, not exactly, you'd have to change the gendered terms for a part, but two characters that a handful of fans have wondered where in the world they've been, you can apply that same exact statement to. But regardless, let's just discuss Lou. Lou had zero reason to go missing. She wasn't dead, she wasn't seriously injured, she wasn't just like weak. I'm not gonna hold you, like, not too weak to be in the story. At the point where she stopped really being relevant for more than 170 chapters in this manga, she was, am I crazy for saying she was stronger than Shin? Or like at least on his level? Because the way she dealt with Saw, speaking to me, is like, oh, okay, yeah, she's gonna be hanging around for a while. Like, she can hold her own. I mean, she has to drink alcohol, but maybe she can turn that into a thing where she doesn't rely on alcohol to get into that power, or make like the alcohol power her base form, like it's like Super Saiyan God going into Super Saiyan type stuff, you know. But nah, we're good. Just throw it to the side. And I never understood that. There is plenty of ways as to where the author could have shoot her into the story. Even though she's not an assassin, I don't see a reason as to why she couldn't have been a part of things like the JCC infiltration arc, the JCC exams, like become an assassin that doesn't kill. Be part of the team. We want you here. And the fact that she was already able to handle people, like she had hands, she had the capabilities to be in the story, but for some reason, Yuta Suzuki, the author, decided to just remove her for the most part. And the biggest offense for Lou, like the biggest missed opportunity that I saw when I was reading this manga, was not stopping that loser from blowing up the store and nearly taking off the family. Like, the cope I've seen for Lou is that, oh, her job is just to protect the shop and the family. That's it. She couldn't even do that. She didn't do that. So it's like, what are we doing? What's going on? And in that moment, when she didn't defend the store from being blown up, I was completely like, all right, it's very clear Suzuki just doesn't want her in the story. He wants nothing to do with her, and she's probably never gonna get anything meaningful in the story ever again. But then chapter 226 drops, and now she's back in action. And I just feel like I should be happy. You know, I want Lou back in the story. I want her fighting. I want her protecting the family. But I'm kind of not happy, because now I'm somewhere in between where it feels like he went out of his way to not include her in many events that she could have been a part of, and now it feels like even more of a waste to not use her in those events. And it just doesn't sit right with me, seeing as to how she was just sidelined for the whole manga for no real reason, and then brought back at the end of the story to fight this jobber. And here's one other thing too. I've seen some things where some people are like, where she had to be sidelined for the story because the publishers didn't like that she was drinking, and they didn't want to show underage drinking or drinking to underage people or something like that. But here's the thing, is like that went out of the window when chapter 226 dropped, and she's dropping a can of beer that she just drank. So I don't get it, but I will take my dub as a somewhat Lou fan at this point. I will take my dub, and be happy that she's at least getting a fight before the series closes. But moving on to Apart now. Apart showed up in the Death Row Prisoners arc as an antagonist, and by the end of that arc, he was leaving it almost as a member of Team Sakamoto. But then he gets his arm cut off and just suddenly disappears. And I've seen this argument that he was announced to be dead because of the statement at the end, which says that there is 176 dead, 3 injured, and 1 missing. And I've got to tell you, that is some of the worst cope I've ever seen as to why a character just up and left, because it's just very obvious he was supposed to be the one missing. Clearly, he did not die during that whole event since we were with him the entire time. And if he was one of the 3 injured, then he wouldn't be missing from the story. And even if he wasn't somehow the missing one and he did die off camera from having his arm cut off or whatever, then I gotta ask, who in the world could it be that was that important enough to be listed as missing but was never once relevant to the story? And Sakamoto Days isn't over, so he still has a chance to return, and I'm also a fan of him being the one missing so that his comeback can be great. But the thing is that we are in the final arc, and the use for his character at this point feels like it's almost been completely diminished. Like, there were several chances to bring him back, and we missed, in my opinion, the best chance to bring him back, which was in the JA or Ja prison. I'm just gonna call it Ja. He could have been brought back during the Ja prison arc, since, you know, he's a dangerous international criminal, and it would explain as to why he's down there and has been MIA from the story. And his addition to that arc not only would have made sense, but it would have just been great to see, especially after having Boiled return. Like, imagine this lineup. You got Shin, Hisuke, Boiled, Apart, Tenkyu, Atari, like, as the focal cast of this arc. Why shouldn't that have been a thing? I really do think, like, Tenkyu versus Shin was fine, it was peak, leave it as it is. But Hisuke versus Torres, even though that got off screen, it would have been a lot easier to explain as to how Hisuke was able to hold his own and fend off against Torres if Apart was also there and just helping out in the background. He doesn't even have to be like a order tier member. He could just be someone that is at least capable enough to just, you know, defend. But we didn't get that, and that's okay. But speaking of Boiled, as glad as I am to have him back, like, Yudo Suzuki used Boiled correctly. There still needs to be some explaining, because where is Obiguro? Those two were presented to us as like a package deal back in Sugar Park when they first dropped, right? And she's nowhere to be found now while Boiled is thriving in screen time. And I could definitely buy that she may have just not been sent to that prison or like evaded arrest or even turned a new leaf, but just to be gone with no plans to seemingly mention her once is a problem. Like, they're not even thinking about getting her. Like, they need members right now. They need as much help as possible. And they're not even thinking like, yo, Boiled, what happened to Obiguro? But moving on, now we're gonna get into some of the, like, I think really heavy hitter characters that people are gonna love to talk about with missed opportunities and just characters not being used correctly. I'm gonna start off with Takamura. Mr. Takamura, he was handled incredibly well until the very end. Like, he had an aura within Sakamoto Days that not only was hard to do within that story, but in other stories, it's hard to replicate that same type of sensation that Mr. Takamura was putting out when he was confronting another character, when other characters were really confronting him. But a presence like that should not just be wasted, and to kill him off was just something I felt like was not the right thing to do. And the way to proceed after that is an even bigger problem, because now Uzuki suffers as a character since nobody that's up there in the verse thinks of him as a real threat until Takamura comes out. And I'm not even upset about how it happened, like how Uzuki got the upper hand against Takamura and whatever. Like, there was foreshadowing as to how he would even do that back in the Death Row Prisoners arc during the John Massacre or JAA Massacre. And I feel like if Mr. Takamura were still alive, or if he was at least beaten in another way, his character could have been much more within the story. And one other point too, because I don't want to really harp on Mr. Takamura for too long, but we know next to nothing about his backstory or how he became who he is, or even how old this dude is, which, to be honest, I'm in the middle on that. Like, I kind of like the mystery since it adds to the ominous part of his character, but I wouldn't mind knowing more about him. But moving on from Mr. Takamura, it's time to let him go. He died nearly 100 chapters ago at this point. It's time to let Mr. Takamura go and move on to the current, because we got to speak about Atari. So Atari, her powers have always been very divisive within this community, especially like when the fan base imploded with the tunnel effect. Like, that was something I did not really expect people to get that upset about. Like, I read the tunnel effect, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna get some people mad, but the overall reaction was like, wow. Regardless, that's never really been a problem with me because that's just who she is and it's consistent. My gripe with her, however, was how she was handled during that whole scene with the tunnel effect, because I feel like her last bit of luck was really wasted in that moment. Given how insane the tunnel effect is mathematically, that last bit of luck should have been used in a way that was more impactful on the story instead of just the tunnel effect. Because even if you delete that chapter where the tunnel effect happened and you just tweak the ending to the one before and you tweak the start to the one after, almost nothing would have changed. Like, and now she's just here as a vessel of bad luck, which, side note, I actually really do like that concept of her being nothing but bad luck. It adds to the stakes of the story, which was a whole nother argument that people had within this community, that Sakamoto Days has no stakes, but I digress. I like the concept of her just being a vessel of bad luck, but once again, I really do think that her last bit of luck should have just went to something way more impactful. Like, I don't even know what it could have been, because if she's doing the tunnel effect, there's so many like improbable things that she could have made happen in that moment. So I don't know what it could have been. And maybe even the consequence too could have been something that was a little more serious, because this series is no stranger to people dying. And I don't want characters to die, but it is not a stranger to people dying or like wars happening or something. So yeah, that's all I gotta say about Atari. Moving on though, I gotta speak about Kindaka, because his performance after coming out of the coma is like underwhelming. He literally is nerfed, and it's hard to see how he's not nerfed, because he just sits around or hasn't been as helpful in certain situations as he could have been. And I really don't want to hear any excuses about him being washed, because this was the first thing he did once he got up and out of that hospital. But even if that somehow isn't enough for you and you're still like, yeah, he's washed, like there was nothing proving that he can actually be capable in the story right now, let me remind you that his presence tipped the scale when Sakamoto and his crew left the prison. They were met with the new order. This dude Oki, he was talking all his trash to Sakamoto and his guys, saying that 2 order members would have been enough to handle Sakamoto and all of them. But then as soon as Kindaka, and also Yotsumura, let's not forget him, but as soon as Kindaka shows up and starts running circles around him and outspeeding him, suddenly it's not cost effective and they need to retreat. And even then, in that exact moment, Oki himself confirmed that Kindaka is still the fastest assassin alive. So like, there's no way I'm accepting, yeah, he's washed or he's just trash, dude. And I'll give you a great example right now as to how he's been nerfed, because like, yeah, there was like that whole thing where Sakamoto was not feeling well and Shin and whoever else is out there is kind of on the street handling the civilians and trying to get them to stop killing each other. But the greatest example I can give you right now is how they're all in the back of the van in chapter 226. They are all in the back of the van watching over Sakamoto, and Kindaka and everybody else in that van got speed blitzed by this loser policeman, and he was about to put a cap in Sakamoto until Lou, of all people, caught him off guard. Like, come on. The fastest assassin couldn't stop him from getting to Sakamoto, and then he couldn't just like throw him out the van or something. But regardless, I'm okay with ignoring certain things to make the story work or make certain things happen, because now this is Lou's fight. And even just to think about Lou for a second, she's not only going to be fighting the jobber loser cop, but she's gonna be fighting like everyone else in that area too. Even if they are fodder, like that's an impressive feat, especially with no training, at least to our knowledge. After the Death Row Prisoners arc, like that's a very impressive feat. It kind of convinces me even more that she could have been used in the story prior to this. But where was I going with that? Yeah, that was it. Like, it's just, I'm all right with ignoring certain things to make it work. But to have it done with one of my favorite characters, and a character that can literally end it all in a lot of these situations, just doesn't feel good to me. But nonetheless, gotta move on. We gotta talk about Asaki. Not for long though, because I really don't even want to waste my breath talking about this disappointment of a villain. It's not crazy to say that he could have been much more, and he was looking like he was going to be too. But we all know that is just not what happened. And to be fair, the signs were there that he was just a brains over brawn type and like not a strong character, because, you know, he has protection. Sakamoto literally one-tapped him in the neck and he got salty over that and then marked him and Nagumo as enemies to the order and the JA or JA. But even still, I mean, this guy did survive a point-blank explosion, so I don't really know what's going on with Asaki or Asaki or however you say his name. He's just a disappointment, and there's really nothing more past that. It's just a waste of a character to something that could have been more. But let's talk about his brother and Ko. How do I even start this? So let's just talk about them as a group, right? Slur's group has like next to no excuse as to why they're not with him during a lot of the events in the story. And I'm really gonna start off with the biggest offense in my mind, which is Gozu. Like, I like Gozu. Gozu is really cool design, cool character. Not much to say past that because he's only been in the story for maybe like 20-ish chapters at this point. But this dude was nowhere to be found during the events of the story. He must have just been on vacation or something, because even Uzuki was like, "Oh, you're late, Gozu." He just like nothing else was going on. Nothing else. He wasn't in the prison like Tenkyu. Like, Tenkyu has probably the best reasoning as to why he's not there. But he wasn't completing other missions because Uzuki is, as far as we know, like his goal has been everything he's shown us and what he's doing. Like, there's no side missions where he has to go to like Germany or Australia or United States and do some crazy stuff over there. Like, there was nothing going on. So like, he literally was just snoozing and not helping out the whole time. But ignoring Gozu, Tenkyu, I understand why he wasn't there for a lot of the story. But Haruma and Kumanomi, even though they did show up within a reasonable time within the series, it still makes zero sense as to why they were not a part of the Ja Massacre. JA Massacre. How many times I'm gonna say Ja or JA? I don't know. But like, the Ja Massacre at this point in the story, this was their biggest plan as a group, an accomplishment at the time in the story. And you would think that Uzuki would want all hands on deck for this. Like, he got Uda. Uda was, I mean, even though Uda was like the mole, he even had Uda in there helping out. But apparently that's just not what happened. Like, they decided to call out from work and just do side quests instead on their most dangerous mission yet. I don't understand as to why they weren't there. Just doesn't make any sense. Gaku, in my opinion, was done pretty well. Him getting killed by Takamura, definitely fully understandable. But I wish his death was a little more clearer, because, you know, a lot of us were like, oh, is he actually dead? Kind of just happened. Like, he got neji'd, which is like a little upsetting for someone that is held in such a high regard within the verse, to be honest. But in case he's not dead, I'm starting to wonder what's taking him so long to return. Like, Uzuki's side definitely could use his help right now, and I know they can because they're hiring interns to help take care of some of the work. And speaking of Uzuki, I got a lot to say about him, but I'm just gonna wrap it up as he sucks as a leader. Like, this guy has led his people into death numerous times and has suffered major casualties, like people being blown up, ears and fingers being cut, people getting split in half and all that, people being used as pincushion dolls and dressed up as other characters. Like, bro, come on, man. Like, you gotta step back for a moment and think, what am I actually doing here? Because we went to the JAA headquarters, did our thing, Takamura came, we had to split. Then we go to the museum arc where all the assassins are going to be, and we get bodied by Takamura again. Like, what is going on? He doesn't have an answer to them, and he keeps making these stupid plans that puts everybody's lives in danger. I'm surprised Kumanomi is like the only one to really come out on top in a lot of these situations, or like on top meaning like she's not dead. And the fact that he can't keep tabs on his own people and make sure that they actually clock into work, like, there's no way I can respect him as a leader anymore. It's so sad because that once dominant presence he had pre-museum arc, like in the basement at the lab or during the JAA massacre, it's just gone. It's like completely erased from the series, and it's so tragic to see that happen to the main antagonist of the story. But to wrap this whole video up, we gotta talk about Oki, who was probably the worst out of everybody on this list in terms of just his character being used poorly. Because this dude, out of everything that happened in the story, his only excuse as to why he wasn't there was like, I was overseas. How can I help? I was overseas. You gotta be kidding me. Here's the thing about being overseas. That's not gonna cut it when Uzuki and Gaku and Uda just murked 176 members at your base. Hio dies, your second best order member and previous greatest hitman are seen as traitors to the JAA, and then your current greatest member dies to the person the entire order outside of you has been hunting since the start of the story. You don't get to work overseas and kick your feet up and sip tea with Monkey D. Dragon when your team needs you in Japan. You gotta come back. And I can definitely be lenient when it comes to being missing during the JAA massacre or Ja massacre or even Hio dying. But how can you be missing during the biggest assassin event of the year? Like, this is an event that requires all hands on deck and to ensure the protection of the chairman and others during the exhibit. Like, they got everybody. Him being missing for so long in the story, I understand it was like supposed to be a build-up thing or whatever. Like, yeah, he's definitely that guy. Well, I don't even know if he really is that guy, because all he does is retreat, call on Torres, and then just talk trash. But here's the thing, like, if what he was doing overseas was really that important, where he could just miss everything that happened in Japan. Then he's got to pull up the receipts as to what he was doing, because it was looking like he was doing a whole lot of nothing when they needed his help. But with that being said, Sakamoto Days is amazing. I love this manga to death. I will never stop recommending it to people. It's been my favorite weekly Shonen Jump manga outside of One Piece for possibly, I think, like 4 years now. It's actually been 3 years. I started reading this in about April of 2022. But great manga, love it to death. It's just unfortunate to see like this is a problem since like the early days of the manga that has just only gotten worse as the story has gone on. So that's all I gotta say about Sakamoto Days and character utilization. But let me know what you think. Do you think there were other characters who weren't utilized to the best of their ability? Or even on the opposite side, do you think there were other characters who are used perfectly? Let me know in the comments down below. Definitely interested in hearing your thoughts. And if you did enjoy this video, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like, and if you could also subscribe on the way out. But with that being said, I will see you all either in the comments down below or in the next one. Take care, God bless, and see you later.